Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. I'm just sitting here drinking my morning coffee. Looking sexy as hell as usual. For those of you who say I don't look sexy as hell, I'm drinking my coffee in these videos. Nobody cares that you think I didn't ask you. Alright, something that I feel like needs to be brought up regarding the training volume, because I'm doing much higher volumes of training at the moment. I'm doing very high volume training. I have discussed some of the literature on it. And what I mean by very high volume training, I am doing 20 sets of muscle group, more for arms if we count my compound movements towards arms. Meaning if we're counting bench press and pull-ups as triceps and biceps, it's more than 20 because I'm doing 20 sets of direct work for them every week. But yeah, 20 sets quads, 20 sets hamstrings, calves, all that. So when I'm doing that, I do get people who chime in and say things like, yeah, my gains are stagnated. Do you think this would help? No. Why would it help? Meaning, if you are at an effective minimum volume, if we assume all this research is true, and I understand there's a lot of debates about this research, okay? And even anecdotally, you go back and you look at the lower volume, even pro bodybuilders versus the really high volume ones. Is there a massive difference in their size? No, not necessarily. Okay, the ones who are doubling or tripling their volumes are doing what? They're trying to gain a 1%, 2%, maybe a 5% advantage. That's it. Okay, so do we understand that concept? So it's the same thing when you look at any of these high volume studies, and assuming that these studies are accurate, that they're an accurate representation of the larger demographics. Because keep in mind, all these exercise science studies are small sample sizes. They're not always double blinded. There are considerable problems in the field. But what are we talking about? We're talking about people who do 10 or 15 sets. They're gaining this amount of muscle. Keep in mind, what you're looking at for comparative data in all these studies on volume, we didn't have cases where the people doing moderate amounts of volume gained no muscle during this study. They're all on good programming written by coaches who are making sure they're training reasonably hard. Okay, we need a context for that. Okay, do you understand that? They all gained muscle. The people who did the higher volumes, instead of gaining this much muscle, they gained this much muscle. Okay? In other words, if one group gained, whatever, a full kilogram of muscle, right? If they gained a full kilogram of muscle, I'm hoping this keeps recording. My power is flickering on and off. I don't know why. It's, I guess, the weather here. All right, if they gained a full kilogram of muscle during this, the higher volume group gained 1.1 kilograms. So 10% more gains than the others were gaining. Something like that. I'm not saying that's the exact number. So if you're gaining 0 and you take your 0 and multiply it times 1.1, how much is that? It's 0. What I'm suggesting here is that sometimes doubling your training volume, if you can recover from it, being the point here, it's a relatively small increase. This sort of concept is for people who are trying to maximize everything. These are not for people who are saying, I want to make great gains. These aren't people who are saying, I want to make good gains. It's not for people who say, I want to make great gains. It's not for them either. It's for people who say, I want to gain every last tiny drop possible. I want optimal. But if you're down here, if you're doing 10 sets of a muscle group every week, okay, let's call that, I consider that about baseline. I think that's a great starting point for most people. And I think almost anyone, with some exceptions, if you are capable of gaining further muscle, meaning at your lifestyle, whatever's going on, the amount of muscle you gain, your hormonal situation, whatever. Because some people can't gain muscle anymore. Maybe you gained a ton of muscle you were on gear and you came off. Well, you're going to struggle to gain more muscle. That's an example. So when someone says, what do you mean? Can you give me an example? Someone who is an advanced lifter with 10 years of hard training, they're starting to get older, their hormones are declining slightly, and they're in a calorie deficit. That's an example of someone who is not going to gain muscle. Okay? Probably not going to happen. Not saying impossible, but unlikely. So if you are capable of gaining muscle in your situation, someone who's sleep deprived, they're not going to gain muscle. All right. 10 hard sets, programmed correctly, you should make some gains. I don't care where you are in your journey. I could cut down to 10 sets and make gains. I could cut half of my training out. Okay. There's your context. I could remove half of my exercises, or I could take all my exercises I do 5 sets of and cut them down to 3 and do just fine. All right. So from that perspective, that's the perspective I'm coming from with this. Okay, if you did 10 sets, you would absolutely gain muscle. If you are not gaining muscle on 10 to 12 really hard sets, I can tell you, you're not training hard. Your quality is low training in some way. And I've seen guys who are like, I train hard. I'm like, you don't train hard. You think you train hard. They do really slow. They're like, think they train hard because they do 3-second eccentrics and 3-second concentrics, and they squeeze everything hard so that they feel something when they squeeze, and they're 5 reps from failure on every set. And they do low volume. Okay. It's a perfect example. Complete lack of intensity. All right, that can be a factor. Not taking any exercise through an acceptable range of motion. That could be an example. Outside of that, they're not addressing other factors. Sleep, nutrition. They're not sleeping enough, not enough. There's a nutritional issue at play. There's usually some other stuff going on. But if you can't gain muscle, any muscle on 10 sets a week, either your entire lifestyle is getting in the way, or your training quality is extremely low. Your solution to that is not to go to 20 sets or 25. It's probably not going to fix the situation. You need to fix the other things. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.